At 8 in the morning in central Tehran, the air was so still that you could hear the cold wind whistling past enormous concrete blocks. Deep underground, inside a fortified bunker, the most powerful figures in Iran were gathered around a large wooden table. They believed they were in one of the safest places on the planet, protected by a dense air defense network. S-400 radar systems continuously swept the foggy morning sky, while layers of reinforced concrete shielded everything above them. But they had no idea that at that very moment, tens of kilometers above them, a deadly rain of steel was falling. A bunker-busting bomb weighing more than 300 kilograms, its casing made from solid cast artillery barrel steel, was plunging downward at a wind-shredding speed. It would not explode on impact, because the laser sensor in its nose had locked onto the target coordinates long before. It would drill through earth and rock, pierce reinforced concrete that seemed impossible to breach, and carry ultimate destruction into the room. This was no accident. It was the final blow of one of the most sophisticated intelligence operations in modern history. A hidden war between the CIA, Mossad, and Iran's vast security apparatus had reached a brutally bloody conclusion. This is how Tehran's supposedly impenetrable defense system was deceived and crushed completely in a single day. This war did not begin with deafening explosions, but with the absolute silence of cold outer space. Months before that fateful morning, low-orbit satellites of the United States Space Force had silently drifted across the night sky. In the frozen darkness of space, these billion-dollar machines continuously flashed invisible, highly secretive signals. They patiently collected every tiny encrypted fragment of data from Iran's giant antenna stations, slowly rotating through the mist. The country's complex communications network was being carved apart by covert cyber intrusions from hostile forces outside its borders. Deep inside dim, suffocating rooms at CIA headquarters in Langley, top intelligence minds stared fixedly at their screens. They spent countless sleepless hours analyzing every intercepted transmission and every stream of data that seemed meaningless at first glance. They did not merely hack communications systems with spam calls to create cover and diversion. They also redrew detailed movement maps. The primary target was one of the most heavily protected men in the world, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Every smallest detail of his life, from movement habits to internal security protocols, was brought under scrutiny. The operation also involved living shadows, deep cover agents planted inside the system itself. These operatives risked their lives every day to send priceless intelligence about the highest corridors of power. Through the deadly combination of advanced technology and human agents, the curtain of secrecy surrounding Beit Rabari was torn apart. This complex was not just a building, it was an urban fortress with elite guards and layers of protection. It was shielded by an air defense umbrella believed to be impenetrable, with 400 radar systems spread across every corner of the city. Domestic Bavar air defense systems formed an invisible steel barrier, ready to destroy any foreign object entering the airspace. But reality turned out to be far more cruel, as American intelligence uncovered a fatal weakness. It was a tiny fleeting gap in the perfect security system, a secret morning summit of top officials. That morning, black armored convoys rolled quietly, carrying Iran's military elite to a single location. Major General Mohammad Pakpour and National Security Advisor Ali Shamkhani were both on the guest list of death at the Pasteur complex. Inside the bunker, the atmosphere was filled with false confidence, because they trusted the dozens of meters of reinforced concrete above their heads. They did not know that their death sentence had been signed thousands of miles away, and the executioner was already on the way.
Target
The United
coordinates
States
locked.
and Israel
Deploying
knew that a
assets
direct
to Sector
assault
Gamma.
on a fully alert fortress would cost
Confirmation
the
received.
attackers
Secondary strike
unimaginable losses.
inbound.
So they chose to blind the enemy by disabling the central nervous system of Iran's air defense network. Hundreds of defensive positions and hardened ballistic missile silos were locked as fixed targets in Pentagon computer systems. All it would take was a single command, and the shield Iran trusted absolutely would be paralyzed in an instant. The sky over Tehran still looked peaceful, but behind that calm, a machine of destruction was building momentum, waiting to tear everything apart. Tomahawk cruise missiles painted in stealth gray burst from cold launch tubes, ripping through the flat, black surface of the sea. They skimmed across deserted sand dunes, exploiting mountainous terrain to slip through the blind spots of enemy radar. Their engines sounded only like low whistles in the dark, not enough to wake drowsy sentries. Meanwhile, inside the underground bunker on Pasteur Street, the hum of ventilation fans mixed with the rustle of classified documents being turned.
Right
harsh fluorescent light illuminated the tense yet self-assured faces of generals discussing military deterrence strategy. They did not realize that the executioner was approaching at supersonic speed, and every probability had already been calculated to the second. This ruthless preparation lasted for months, turning every passing moment into a silent countdown toward collapse. The sky above Tehran still appeared calm, but in truth it had become a vast black opening exposed to enemy assault. Then the silence was shattered not by a single explosion, but by countless invisible signal breaks across Iran. Hundreds of Tomahawk missiles and precision weapons struck more than 500 critical air defense targets across the country. Inside radar control stations, screens flickered wildly before dissolving into lifeless white static. Massive communications towers burst into flames, severing the information lifeline of Iran's military defense system. Warning sirens began to howl helplessly amid the panicked screams of military officers. The moment the air defense network was completely blinded, the real gates of hell opened with a massive incoming Air Force formation. 200 Israeli fighter jets roared through the night, heading straight for the heart of smoke-covered Tehran. This huge assault force was escorted by aerial refueling aircraft that moved silently, like flying fuel stations in the darkness. The cockpits of F-15s glowed red as Israeli pilots fixed their eyes on the coordinates of Beit Rabari. It was the anchor of the entire operation, the supreme center of power in the middle of the capital, and tonight, it was death's target. Why could a billion-dollar operation be so certain of destroying a target buried beneath countless layers of concrete?
They still
The answer
believe our
lay in a
reassurances.
fatal mistake and the overwhelming arrogance
is a
of those
powerful
hiding
weapon,
below.
Father.
Leaked intelligence sources revealed that Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei had not taken shelter in the deepest and safest bunker of the compound. Perhaps because of inconvenience, or because of excessive faith in the S-400 air shield, they chose to meet in a shallower underground facility. Had they gone a few dozen steps deeper into the deepest shelter, even heavy weapons might have struggled to penetrate it. But history does not deal in if, and in this moment, self-confidence turned them into perfect targets. To pierce that concrete coffin, the IDF did not use ordinary bombs, but specialized bunker-busting monsters. The GBU-28 was about 5 meters long, with an outer casing cast from a solid block of hardened artillery barrel steel, giving it a cold, crushing presence. Its diameter was only 37 centimeters, creating an absurdly narrow profile that allowed it to drive deep into rock and earth. It was a cruel piece of physics, a design that minimized drag and turned the bomb into a giant needle punching through concrete. It could penetrate nearly 100 meters of soft earth, or smash through 6 meters of reinforced concrete. Inside the steel shell were 650 pounds of powerful tritonal explosive, ready to turn everything into dust in an instant. The mixture of 80% TNT and 20% aluminum powder generated a shockwave capable of crushing any steel structure. The most ruthless part was the delayed action FMU-139 fuse, a tiny device programmed never to detonate upon first contact with the surface. It existed to wait patiently until the bomb's enormous kinetic energy broke through the last layer of concrete and entered the bunker void. Above Tehran, the target had been illuminated by invisible laser beams from fighter aircraft, or locked precisely by GPS satellites. Israeli pilots performed the release with cold, machine-like precision, flipping the safety switch to begin the bombing run. 30 heavy bunker-penetrating bombs were released toward the Supreme Leader's compound with absolute accuracy. The fins at the tail of each bomb snapped open, shrieking through the air as they adjusted the slightest angles to guide the steel mass to its target. Below, someone in the bunker may have been taking a sip of tea, unaware that 30 blades of death were falling toward them. When the ground met the incoming steel, there was no instant explosion, only clean penetration through asphalt layers. The nose of the bomb drilled wildly into the void, tearing apart the underground structure before the delayed timer reached zero. Everything erupted when a giant fireball burst outward, releasing unimaginable heat and blowing away walls and supporting columns. The immense shockwave pulverized even the strongest structures, turning reinforced concrete into dust and fragments in blinding white light. The destruction did not stop in that one room, because all 30 bunker busters detonated in synchronized rhythm. The roof of the Beit Rabari complex collapsed level by level, dragging the entire underground network into catastrophic ruin. The attackers left no hope of survival as the earth around the target shook like an earthquake. A vast cloud of smoke and dust rose upward, blotting out Tehran's dawn sky in a horrifying scene. What had once been the nerve center of a military power became a deep crater filled with shattered concrete. Twisted steel beams and a dead silence settled over the Pasteur complex after the assault passed. Meanwhile, Iran's skies flashed with countless streaks of light from secondary explosions and futile air defense fire. The Israeli military did not strike only one building, but also attacked numerous other targets in the outskirts of Lebanon. More than 80 bombs of various kinds were dropped over a wide area, completely leveling a 6-building fortified complex. GBU, 3 precision-guided bombs, costing only $4,000 each, demonstrated ruthless power by collapsing an underground command center. Hassan Nasrallah, leader of Hezbollah, had reportedly been pinpointed after a 5-year covert intelligence effort. Thousands of hours of wiretapping and code breaking helped special units determine the exact moment the target entered the headquarters. The collapse of 6 buildings and the deaths of senior leaders became a grim declaration of overwhelming preemptive strike capability. The list of names crossed out that day was long and bloody, as the entire operational leadership was severed in a single blow. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, holder of ultimate power in the nation, did not survive the shallow bunker he chose. Beside him, Major General Mohammad Pakpour, head of the Revolutionary Guard, was also turned to ash in the blast's heat. Ali Shamkhani, the country's top national security advisor, met the same grim fate at the center of the fireball. The brutal tragedy of modern war did not spare family members of the supreme leader who were reportedly present. Innocent people around the area also suffered the heavy consequences of what military planners coldly called collateral damage. In a single day, this unprecedented military campaign completely redrew the regional balance of power in the Middle East. Nearly 3,000 targets across Iran were struck by the deadly combination of cruise missiles and fighter jets. From blinded radar stations to destroyed ballistic missile bunkers, the entire national defense system collapsed. The fall of Tehran was not merely the breaking of concrete walls, but the collapse of faith in absolute strength. It was the result of a deadly intelligence chess game in which invisible code riding on satellites defeated hardened steel fortresses. Tiny listening devices and deep cover agents staged one of the most perfectly orchestrated military scenarios in history. As the massive dust clouds slowly settled over the Pasteur complex, silence returned, but it carried the taste of devastation. It was no longer the quiet of a peaceful dawn, but the silence of a page of history torn apart. The assassination of Iran's supreme leader sent a brutal message to the world about the invisibility of modern attacks. No defense system is truly impenetrable, and no fortress can hide from eyes in space. Look at how military science has changed when a smart bomb can distinguish between underground levels beneath the earth. The nearly 6-meter length of the penetrator was not just steel and explosives, but the culmination of decades of research into destruction. Using cast artillery barrels as bomb casings showed a ruthless creativity in exploiting the hardness of steel to pierce matter. Every centimeter of concrete penetrated was one step closer to the final target, where death had already been programmed into a circuit board. The laser sensor in the nose functioned like an all-seeing eye, guiding the heavy steel mass through narrow gaps in infrastructure. Even if the target tried to hide beneath civilian structures, ground-penetrating radar could strip away the false protection. The coordination between Israeli air power and American cruise missiles showed a military alliance with extremely high interoperability. Massive Boeing tanker aircraft created an aerial fuel bridge, allowing F-15 fighters to travel enormous distances. Each pilot in the mission carried the burden of changing global politics with a single weapons release. The tension inside cramped cockpits stood in stark contrast to the deadly stillness inside the bunker of Iran's commanders. The two worlds were separated only by a single moment, the instant the bomb left its rack and began its journey toward destruction. The accuracy of the GBU-28 came not only from guidance systems, but from the massive inertia of solid steel falling from high altitude. At high speed, the bomb ceased to be merely a falling object and became a kinetic drill of maximum penetrating power. Layers of rock and soil were shoved aside, making way for the tritonal charge moving ever closer to senior leaders. Military engineers calculated that compression at impact could heat the steel casing to thousands of degrees Celsius in an instant. But the artillery barrel shell was strong enough to keep the bomb intact until it reached the bunker space. This was a race between the strength of Iranian reinforced concrete and the hardness of Western steel in a struggle to the death. When the FMU-139 fuse sensed the sudden pressure change upon entering open space, it instantly triggered the explosive chain reaction. Tritonal, with its aluminum content, burned at extremely high temperatures, melting everything within dozens of meters. The shockwave rushed through ventilation shafts and corridors, turning the bunker into a giant pressure furnace that crushed all life inside. Those within likely did not even understand what was happening before their nervous systems were overwhelmed by pressure. Infrared satellite imagery reportedly captured brilliant flashes erupting from underground, signaling the success of the strike. Technical teams in Tel Aviv and Langley cheered as the life signals of key targets disappeared. The decapitation strike had achieved its ultimate goal without a single soldier landing on the ground. It demonstrated a new era of war in which geography no longer matters before the power of long-range sensing technology. After the blast, the entire Pasteur district was sealed off by Iranian special units amid chaos and total shock. Ambulances screamed through the streets, but rescue efforts became hopeless against the sheer mass of collapsed concrete. The stench of burnt explosives mixed with fine rock dust, turning central Tehran into the scene of a nightmare. International media began broadcasting non-stop reports about a mysterious explosion shaking the heart of the Iranian regime. While the world was still speculating, Israeli pilots had already crossed back over the border and were preparing to land. F-15s touched down in the silence of classified procedure, but every pilot knew they had just made history. They had pierced the S-400 network long praised as a destroyer of stealth aircraft through highly sophisticated electronic suppression tactics. Deceiving enemy radar with electronic decoys created a safe corridor for the main strike force. Iran had spent billions building this steel shield, yet it collapsed because of a weakness in network connection protocols. The lesson about military cybersecurity had never been more costly or more visible after the catastrophic failure of the air defense system. Mossad had proven that it could reach anyone, even someone hiding deep underground in the capital. Its network of planted agents functioned so effectively that it reportedly knew even the exact meeting schedule of Iran's top commanders. Betrayal from within, or leakage from personal electronic devices, may have contributed to the strike. Every electronic device in the meeting area could have become a signal beacon for smart bombs descending from the sky. Modern war is no longer just about bullets and explosives, but about bits of data and control of the electromagnetic spectrum. The GBU-28 bombs were only the visible tip of an iceberg involving global positioning systems and artificial intelligence analysis. Imagine the terrifying psychological pressure on other leaders once they realize that underground bunkers are no longer truly safe. The concept of a safe shelter has been erased after 30 penetrator bombs turned concrete into dust. This was a devastating blow to the morale of the Revolutionary Guard, which lost many of its most experienced commanders. The rupture in the chain of command at such a sensitive moment could trigger the collapse of the broader military system. Geological analysis of Tehran's ground structure suggested that the Pasteur district had relatively stable soil, yet even that could not withstand the strike. The use of 30 bombs against a single target showed the determination of the U.S. Israeli alliance to destroy it at any cost. They wanted to leave not even the smallest probability of survival for those inside the bunker. Each bomb was dropped only seconds apart to ensure overlapping shockwaves and maximum destructive resonance. This was a problem in structural destruction physics, carefully modeled by explosive specialists. The result was a clean and terrifyingly precise annihilation that demonstrated total technical superiority. When the last fires were extinguished, the world began to grasp the true scale of the attack. It was not merely one building collapsing, but an entire power system shaken at its roots by steel force. Satellite images of the site showed a massive dark crater in the middle of proud Tehran. International military analysts began dissecting every detail of the operation to understand how the radar network had been beaten. Using Tomahawk missiles as decoys to expose air defense positions was an extremely clever tactical move. While S-400 systems were busy intercepting decoy targets, the F-15 strike group slipped in from another direction. The coordination between branches and allied nations created an almost impossibly perfect attack scenario. For Iran, it became a bitter lesson in placing too much faith in imported defense technology without full control over it. They believed concrete walls and long-range missiles would keep their leadership absolutely safe. But in the age of precision warfare, not a single square meter on Earth can be called completely invulnerable. The death of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei left a vast power vacuum and an extremely uncertain future for the region. Whoever succeeds him will face the harsh reality that their enemies may see through every corner of an underground bunker. The strike on Pasteur Street will be taught in military academies, as a classic example of a decapitation campaign. It showed how artificial intelligence, big data, and kinetic weapons can alter the course of the world overnight. Looking back from the first satellite signals to the detonation of the GBU-28, one sees a grim internal logic. No detail was unnecessary, and no action was accidental in this deadly intelligence game. Mossad and the CIA proved that real power lies not in the number of soldiers, but in mastery of information. Whoever controls the flow of data controls the battlefield and decides the fate of the guilty. This assassination did not just eliminate individuals. It shattered an old military doctrine based on concealment. The transparency imposed by space-based surveillance made every attempt to hide underground increasingly meaningless and dangerous. Each bunker buster dropped was a stern warning to anyone planning to challenge the system. Technology has no heart. It merely executes programmed orders with cold, merciless accuracy. Looking at the ruins of Beit Rabari, one sees the cruelty of war, but also the extraordinary advance of engineering. Old artillery barrels recycled into bomb casings stand as proof of brutally practical creativity in the defense industry. Every millimeter of steel and every gram of tritonal carried a single purpose: to end an underground reign of power. At the end of the mission, the F-15S returned to base beneath a blood-red sunset that recalled the losses of the day. No matter how much the victors celebrated, the shock waves of those explosions would continue to echo through Tehran for years. History would remember that day as a turning point, when the final fortress of secrecy was shattered. Underground bunkers now looked less like shelters and more like concrete death traps when the enemy held the technological key. We live in a world where safety is a luxury, and every secret will one day be exposed. The story of the assassination of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei would remain a reminder of the power of preparation and patience. An operation lasting years was traded for only a few seconds of penetration, yet its consequences could last a century. The shadows of Mossad and the minds of the CIA would continue their path through the darkness of hidden wars. There is no applause for killers, but there is a grim respect for those capable of carrying out the unimaginable. The sky over Tehran tonight would never look the same again, and the bunkers on Pasteur Street would remain a scar in history. Thank you for following this breakdown of the greatest decapitation operation of the century on our documentary channel. If you found this information useful, do not forget to subscribe so you do not miss the next secret files we reveal. The truth always lies deep beneath layers of concrete, and our mission is to drill through them and bring it to light. Always stay alert and keep questioning the world around you, because sometimes the truth is even more unbelievable than fiction. Goodbye for now, and see you again in the next episode featuring daring escapes and brilliant minds next week.